كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر صدق الله العلي العظيم. Dear brothers and sisters, please illuminate your hearts and minds and this majlis with a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Ever since COVID came and transformed the world in 2020, you found that there have been many unintended consequences and changes in our cultures and in a collective experience. For example, you find that notions surrounding work, family, and time have radically changed ever since COVID. More people than ever are quitting. Right? You hear always there's a labor shortage. Well, one reason is that ever since COVID, people began to reassess their priorities in life. Why is it that I'm working? What's my goal? What am I trying to achieve in working? You find many people, they were so obsessed with work, they forgot the other priorities they had in life. Therefore, after COVID, many people started spending, for example, more time with their families. Many people began to choose working from home options. Why? So that they could spend more time with their family, with their loved ones. Especially if you have young children, you want to be around them. Life is not all work. Ever since the start of COVID, people began to reassess their relationship with their time. All of a sudden, people had so much time and they didn't know what to do. So you found a plethora of options came up. You find certain people after COVID, they used to be really skinny, really scrawny. After COVID, mashallah, they've been hitting the gym. They've been working on their bodies. You find some people, they've changed their diet and their lifestyle. Some people began to take up hobbies, whether that's reading, knitting. Bird watching was really popular during COVID, right? You'd buy some binoculars and watch the birds and wildlife in your yard as a form of entertainment, as a form of hobby to pass time. Some people began to learn new skills, right, that would help them in their career. COVID redefined our relationship with our time. People began to see that time shouldn't just be for entertainment and for work. We have other priorities in our life, and COVID really switched for many people. Well, am I really spending as much time as I want on the priorities that I have? My family, my Lord, my friends, my hobbies. So inshallah, tonight we will be discussing this issue after a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. In the United States, in Michigan, March 15th, 2020 was the start of the lockdowns. Now, as of today, that's 870 days ago. I remember as if it was yesterday. Doesn't feel that long ago. But 870 days have passed. So we all have to ask ourselves, what have we been doing in the meantime? What have we invested our time, our efforts, and our energy in? Al-Fakhr al-Razi, a prominent Sunni scholar, narrates a story in which, in the city of Medina, a merchant who would sell ice. Back in the day, no one had fridges or freezers. So if you wanted to cool your food, if you wanted to have some nice iced coffee, what you would have to do is you would have to go to the market. There'd be a guy with a stand. He would go, and I'm not sure where exactly, he would find ice, a big block of ice. He would come and he would sell it. You'd ask for a certain amount, he'd measure it out, sculpt it out, and offer it to you. So on this particular day, maybe it was a weekday, I'm not sure, he wasn't getting as much business as usual. So he's standing at noon. The heat of the sun is hitting him and his ice begins to melt. So he begins pleading with everyone that passes by. He says, look, guys, my Rasoul mal, my capital is melting. Please come and purchase before I go broke. Now, respected brothers and sisters, our time is the same. Our time is like ice. Whether you utilize it effectively or not, it's melting and it's going away. And those minutes that pass will never be recovered. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us every single day 8,600 minutes. Right? And each minute is a blessing. How do we use our time? Do our actions and the way we use our time match our goals and our priorities in life? Or do we end up wasting much of our time? All this blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. In fact, in the verses we just recited, wal asr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by time. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Lord of the universe, when He swears, it's not by something light. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swears by time. That what? Allah swears by time that we, humankind, are at a loss. Regardless of what we do in our lives, we will all regret our lives at the end. You know, billions of years used to exist before me and billions of years after me. You'll feel like, what did I do that was of any worth, of any value? Regardless of what you do, at the end of your life, you will have regrets, except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He makes an absolute statement and then He follows it with illa, that means this is the only exception to the rule. Allah swears by time that we are all at a loss, except who? إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Except those who believe, except those who abide by righteous action, and except those who abide by the principles of truth and patience. And subhanAllah, if you look at these four, these are a basic summary of our religion. Right? You find Islam is an orthopractic and orthodoxic religion. We have a set of beliefs that we abide by. We have a set of practices that we also abide by. And also, truth and patience are at the core and foundations of our religion. So unless you abide by these four principles, proper belief, righteous action, patience, and truth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you are at a loss. However, many of us, unfortunately, we don't really take into consideration how valuable our time is. And we end up wasting much of our time. According to the website Statista, the average American spends, and maybe this includes Canadians as well, I'm not too sure, around 4 hours a day watching TV. Now, perhaps this statistic leans higher towards the boomer side. You know, maybe the younger generations don't watch as much TV. But if you include all kinds of media, around 4 hours a day watching TV and other related media. The same study cites that the average adult spends 3.5 hours a day on their phone. Now, is it all making important business calls? No. You're scrolling through WhatsApp, right? All those groups and all the fake news circulating. You're scrolling through Instagram, Snapchat. Is it really anything of value and of productivity? The same study also says that a large majority of teens, 15 and under, spend, listen to this, over 6 hours a day on TikTok. Right? I'm sure you've all heard of TikTok. 6 hours a day on TikTok. I mean, that's insane. That's almost a school's worth, right? TikTok might as well be educating them. And dear brothers and sisters, TikTok, especially for our youth, is very dangerous and toxic. If your child has unrestricted access to the internet, to a phone, to TikTok, unfortunately, and I hate to break the news, they have been exposed to many dangerous ideas and content. You look at TikTok, for example, all the inappropriate material circulating, all the inappropriate dances, inappropriate language in the music, right? Geared at who? Who's the majority of users on TikTok? People ages 15, 12 and under. Kids. Atheism is widely propagated on this app. So if we allow our kids to have unrestricted and unfettered access to this app, to TikTok, what happens? Right? The average parent sees their kids how often a day? Maybe an hour and a half. That versus 6 hours a day on the University of TikTok. Well, unfortunately, naturally, what's going to happen is that your kid, your children, your sons, your daughters will be indoctrinated in the ideas circulating TikTok, which unfortunately are not the best of quality. Another big time waster, my dear brothers and sisters, is music. Many of us use music as a method to cope with, our stress, our anxiety. We have a favorite artist that we listen to. And we spend hours and hours a day drowning out our sorrows and our anxiety in music. Now, music is its own topic, inshallah. Another day we could discuss. But in addition to being a sin, to listen especially to that inappropriate music with the inappropriate language, explicit content, music is a big time waster for many of us. Another thing many of us struggle with, especially those of us who come from the Middle East, is what Imam Zain al-Abidin, peace be upon him, in Dua Abi Hamza Thamali states as Majalisul Battalin. Right, you have people who gather at night from Maghrib till morning. What are they doing? They're playing cards. 400. Right, or they're smoking the shisha, hookah. Now, it's fine to gather with your friends and have fun, but sometimes people take it too far. 4 or 5 hours sitting in this gathering, and what's being discussed? So I wish, atmanna, the discussion was, something relate to knowledge, something about a profession, something regarding the Ahlul Bayt. What do you, he did this, he bought this, she did this. It's all ghiba, it's all useless talk. Imam Zain al-Abidin describes this as Majalisul Battalin, and he asks inside the dua that Allah protects him and the believers from Majalisul Battalin. There's a beautiful hadith from Imam Ali, peace be upon him. He states, Majalisatu ahlil dana'ati shar. Unfortunately, many of us have bad friends, right? People we hang out with that are not the best in nature. They may not use the most proper language. They're always talking about other people. Such people, hanging out with them, sitting with them, the Imam describes as evil. People who, when you sit with them, they don't uplift you. They don't teach you something new. You don't benefit from them. You don't feel closer to Allah. Avoid these people. They're just a waste of your time. And as the Imam says, they're an evil on your soul. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. A major issue many college students, many employees find is procrastination. Now, procrastination is something that can really destroy your time and take away all the barakah, all the blessings and productivity of your time and day. There's a hadith from the Ahlul Bayt that states, إِنَّ أَكْثَرْ أَهْلِ الْمَحْشَرِ ضَجِيجًا مِنَ التَّسْوِيفِ. That on the day of judgment, when people gather, those who are most regretful, causing the most scene, pleading with Allah their case, is who? Those who would constantly engage in procrastination. I'll play later. As soon as this NFL game is done, I'll pray. Or I have maybe 5-6 days of missed fast. At the end of the year, before next Ramadan, I'll make that up. Or if you're a student, I'm really tired right now. Tomorrow, an hour before the test, I'll start to study. If you work, the deadline's in a month. I'll get started in 29 days. Many people on the day of judgment who have regrets, it's because of their issues with procrastination in this life. In fact, there's a story during the time of Rasulullah. Sallu alayhi bi'ala aswatikum. A man from a nearby village approached the city of Medina. So as he approached, he saw Rasulullah and the companions inside the masjid. Rasulullah was teaching them, they were exchanging knowledge. So he came, he was very intrigued. He asked Rasulullah, teach me about this religion. So Rasulullah, even though he didn't know who he was a villager. He began to sit down with him. He talked to him about tawheed, about adala, about social justice. And this man was highly impressed. He said, yes, O Muhammad, I believe in everything you have to say. Then Rasulullah started to teach him the ahkam. We have prayer, we have fast. He said, yeah, that's fine with me. So Rasulullah began to list them until he reached the prohibition of alcohol. So once he reached that, this man said, no. I'm an addict. I drink alcohol more than I drink water. So he was like, that's too difficult for me. He said, he was trying, look at the mindset of this guy. He was trying to bargain with Rasulullah. He said, Rasulullah, is it okay? I'll join your religion. I'll give you my money, my support, but just make an exception for me. Can you talk to your Lord? Let me drink alcohol. Rasulullah said, it's one package. You take it or you leave it. He says, if you want to follow my Lord, he demands complete obedience. So this man, on the one hand, he was fully convinced of everything Rasulullah had taught him. But on the other, that habit, right? Alcohol, he can't leave it. He can't just quit. So he said, Rasulullah, look, I'll go back to my village. I'll drink as much as I can this year. Next year, I'll come to Medina. I'll move here and I'll declare my shahada. But dear brothers and sisters, what's the problem? As we discussed a few nights ago, are you guaranteed that tomorrow morning you're going to wake up? So this man went back to his village. He drank and drank and drank until he died from alcohol poisoning. And he did not have the tawfiq and the blessings to come back to Medina and take the shahada. SubhanAllah. Look, there are some converts or reverts that come to our Husayniyat, our masajid, and they take so much pride, and Allah rewards them so much for taking on this enormous step. Now this man had the opportunity to declare his shahada in front of Rasulullah, the man who brought down the religion, and to learn under the tutelage of Rasulullah, pray behind Rasulullah. Why did he forego this opportunity? Because of his procrastination. Dear brothers and sisters, we have to always remind ourselves that in this life, our present self and our future self are always coexisting. Now, in what sense? On any action, on any given day, you have to decide, this action that I'm about to engage in, is it for my present self so that I can enjoy the moment? Or is it for my future self so that I can achieve an accomplishment, achieve my goals? It's always one at the expense of the other. You either sacrifice in the now so that you gain in the future, or you sacrifice your future so that you can gain now. So always make it a priority to think now has to be sacrificed for my future. And inshallah, with that, with practice, you'll be able to overcome procrastination. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. It's very important, dear brothers and sisters, that we know and understand how to organize our time. Because when your time is disorganized, you will be very ineffective in achieving your goals. The first thing I would recommend, if you don't already have done so, is get a planner. Get a schedule. Get an actual planner. Doesn't matter if the cover is pink or blue. Go to the grocery store. Get a planner and start planning out your daily activities from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to sleep. You would be surprised to see how much time is wasted in between your appointments, after work. When you don't plan out your days, what happens? Naturally, chaos will envelop and you won't get anything done. Right? You'll see that notification on Instagram and you'll begin to scroll, right? The never-ending scroll. You have to plan out your days even according to the minute. A teacher that I highly respect in Qom, he's a teacher in the Hawza. He's a grand scholar in the seminary. He once told us that he plans out his day from the moment he wakes up to the moment he sleeps. To such an extent that even his walk from his house to the classroom, which is like a 5 to 7 minute walk, right? He lives nearby. Even during that walk, he has an activity planned. He's a scholar, right? He's a jurist. So he's like, every day, that 5 to 7 minutes that I go, 5 to 7 minutes that I come back, I delegate that I will discuss and in my mind think about this particular fiqhi issue. This particular intellectual issue, I'll discuss it during that walk. When you tally up the minutes like that, you'll find that otherwise you would have had hours lost. When you add up those seconds and those minutes, they add up. They add up to hours. So have a daily planner and plan out your activities from morning till night. Another thing I highly recommend to put your life into perspective is Google what a life calendar is. Now, if you're not familiar with this term, just Google life calendar. What it is you plug in how old you are. Let's say you're 30. What happens is you get a grid with a bunch of boxes, hundreds of boxes. Each box represents a week. Now, depending on your age, let's say you're 30, 30 times 52, that many amount of boxes is filled in black. And let's say you have a projected age you can enter, let's say 70, 80, may Allah inshallah prolong our lives, 85. The life you have ahead of you is empty. Those boxes are not filled in black. You would be surprised at how much time has passed by. I've lived so much of my life. So if you're in your 30s or 40s and your projected life is, let's say, 70, 80, half that grid is full. Not much is left. So when you put into perspective like that every box is a week, you start thinking, what am I going to be doing with those boxes? Am I just going to let the time pass by without me doing anything productive, without me working towards my goals? And thus, get a notebook. Plan out your 5, 10, 15, 20-year goals and start working towards them. When you plan out your day in your daily planner, consciously think, what am I doing today? What am I going to do tomorrow that will help me achieve my goals? Whether that be my 1-year goals or my long-term 20-year goals. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. We are also able to learn from the Ahlul Bayt time management and time management skills. Dear brothers and sisters, Ahlul Bayt are not just for fiqh, for laws, halal and haram. The Ahlul Bayt have knowledge as much as the oceans. So you can find in the hadith tips on how to organize your time such that you get the most out of your time. One hadith states that the best time for studying, whether you're a student, you have an exam ahead of you, or you're just trying to learn something, is بين الطلوعين, between Fajr and sunrise. This is usually an hour and a half. In fact, it's makruh to sleep during this time. So if you wake up for Fajr and you want to study for something, you want to memorize something, this is the best time to study. In another hadith, one of the imams states that it's makruh to read, whether that's a newspaper, a book you want to study, half hour before Maghrib. That's a time that you should dedicate towards worship for Allah. As the sun is setting and you set up your prayer mat ready to pray Maghrib, that half hour before Maghrib, dedicate it towards worship. From the hadith, we gather that if you want to visit people, you want to visit your family, your parents, you have friends that you'd like to visit, keep your visits during the day. Don't visit at night. Now, of course, it's not haram to visit at night, but it's more recommended to keep your visitations during the day. The night is a time for rest. It's a time for worship. It's a time for reading. So keep that night. It's a time for reflection, right? Reflecting what you did during the day. Keep that for yourself. And if you want to engage in socialization, keep that towards the day. One hadith from Imam Ali Amir al-Mu'mineen states that every one of us needs to learn the art of delegation. Learn how to delegate tasks. Especially if you run a company, you have to learn the skill, right? You can't do everything by yourself. So if you have kids, start training them how to write the check, how to pay bills, how to fix something in the house. If you look into the subject and you read the hadith, you will find tens of hadith on how to manage your time. Tips the Ahlul Bayt offer on time management. But the greatest tip I can offer you today is that when planning your days, try to revolve your days around Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How so? when you plan your day, dear brothers and sisters, plan it around prayer. Whether that's Fajr, Dhuhr and Asr, or Maghrib. If you're at work, try to get your break, whether that's your lunch break or your time off, during Dhuhr and Asr, so that you're able to pray comfortably without a rush. During Maghrib, make sure you have no obligations during that time. If you want to visit someone, if you want to do some extracurricular activity, you want to engage in some hobby, you want to go fishing, keep that either before or after Maghrib. Have that time for Maghrib, especially like we mentioned, that half hour before, for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And trust me, once you start centering your days around prayer, you will be noticeably different in your spirituality. You will notice your days are unlike the days that preceded. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Now, in order to gain the best from our days and from our time, there are three key areas of focus that, like the Quran said, if you want to not be at a loss for your time, if you want to be happy and not regretful with what you've done in your life, there are three key areas where you need to especially invest your time in. And that's knowledge, taqwa, and family. As for knowledge, the hadith states, your knowledge today should not be like your knowledge yesterday. You should always be constantly trying to learn. Whether that's within your given field, if you're a doctor in biology and chemistry, if you're an engineer, if you're an anthropologist, whatever your field is, try to learn every single day. And of course, dedicate some time to learning Islamic sciences, the hadith of Ahlul Bayt, reading the Quran. If you spend, dear brothers and sisters, 15 minutes a day, 15 minutes is not that much, right? I'm sure if you plan your day well, you can find 15 minutes in your day. If you just dedicate 15 minutes of your day to learning something new, over a given year, how much is that? That's over 90 hours. Now, 90 hours in any given subject practically makes you a semi-expert. Just spend 15 minutes a day, and over the years, look at the progress that you will make. 15 minutes a day is all that it takes. There's a story that really personally inspires me, that shows the extent that which you should strive to learn knowledge. This is the story of a scholar in the Hawza known as Al-Mudarris Al-Afghani. Now, this is a grand scholar. In fact, he used to be my respected father's teacher. This grand scholar, he was born in a small village in Afghanistan. His parents were farmers, and they had very limited means. But ever since he was young, he always had this passion for learning. He always wanted to be a scholar, and a scholar in the way of Allah. So he had pleaded with his parents to help him in that path. But given their means and, at the time, this is maybe 90 years ago, the means were not there. But look at his dedication. SubhanAllah. Like we mentioned yesterday, if you put your mind to something, you are able to do it. The only blocks in front of us are mental blocks. There were no planes then. He couldn't afford a car. Mudarris al-Afghani, at the age of 15, walked all the way from Afghanistan to Iraq. Dear brothers and sisters, do you know how far that is? Do you know how many mountains he had to pass? How many thousands of kilometers of hiking? And yet he did it. At such a young and tender age, he was 15 years old. He walked the treacherous valleys and mountains all the way from Afghanistan to Iraq until he arrived in the holy city of Najaf. Now, once he arrived, he knows nobody there. He has no family. He has no connections with anyone. So he arrives in the city. He goes, he visits Amir al-Mu'mineen. After he leaves, he doesn't really know where to go. So he starts walking around the city until he finds himself inside Wadi Salam, which, by the way, dear brothers and sisters, is the largest cemetery on earth. So he starts walking. It starts approaching nighttime. Now he doesn't know where to go. He finds a door leading to a basement in Wadi Salam. So given that he has no alternative, he goes inside the basement. So he's looking. There's graves all around him, but, he finds a place, he sets up camp, and he starts sleeping. He wakes up for Fajr. He's very tired. He goes, he sees a stream of water. And he's still drowsy. He's not really fully awake. So without thinking, what is this water? He goes and he starts drinking that water. Wake up in the middle of the night, he's thirsty. Well, after he drank that water, he woke up a little bit. Started thinking, I'm in a cemetery. What is this water? There's no streams, there's no rivers. So he looks. This is the water that they used to wash dead bodies. After they wash the dead bodies, it ends up draining in that area. So he felt so disgusted. But at the same time, he was heartbroken. Who does he go to? He starts running towards the shrine of Imam Ali alayhi salam. He goes, he holds on to the shrine and he starts crying. He says, "Oh Imam Ali, oh my Imam, is this the hospitality that you provide? Is this the kind of host that you are?" And he begins crying. He swears that he hadn't even exited the shrine area yet when he saw someone running towards him. He saw someone running towards him, and then he approaches him. He says, "What's your name?" He gives him his name. He says, "Who are you?" He says, "I'm a teacher in one of the seminaries here. We heard that someone has been walking around and we suspected you may be a student. Would you like to join and enroll in the seminary?" He says, "Yes. In fact, that's why I came this long journey. I came precisely to become a scholar." So he says, "Don't worry. We've gotten you a place. You now have a stipend and you start your classes tomorrow." SubhanAllah, mere minutes after complaining to Amir al-Mu'mineen, the Imam answered his dua. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So we should try to make as much an effort in obtaining knowledge and learning. For the hadith says, اطلب العلم من المهدي إلى اللحد. Number 2 is taqwa. We have to work on our piety and taqwa, our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you improve your khushu', your concentration and your dedication in prayer, even 0.5% every single day. That's not much, right? We're always distracted. As we're praying, the kebab is getting, cooked in the kitchen and we get distracted. But if you try to improve your concentration, your khushu', at least 0.5% every single day, over time, that compounds to a huge amount. Make an effort, even if it's small, even if it's those baby steps, to improve your khushu' in prayer. Now, one tip that I often give, if you find it difficult to focus in your prayer, is every single day, try to find one ni'mah, one benefit, one blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with, and dedicate today's prayers towards that ni'mah. If your parents are still alive, you have a good relationship with them, and they pray for you, dedicate today's prayers for that ni'mah. If you have a good job, a stable occupation, dedicate today's prayers for this ni'mah. This will help you immensely in focusing and concentrating inside your prayers. Try to read as much Quran as you can. We have one hadith that's Imam Rida, peace be upon him, would complete a full cycle of the Quran, a full khatma every 3 days. That's 10 full cycles every single month. Unfortunately, many of us, the Quran is just a beautiful decorative cover right inside our libraries, inside our homes, just to collect dust. Open the Quran, even if it's a page a day. Try to increase your relationship with Allah. Right? Allah could have sent us, a 7-book volume like Harry Potter. But Allah's words is just one book, 600 pages. Make an effort to read even a single line, a single ayah a day. And if you don't speak Arabic, that's fine. You don't have to speak Arabic. You could even read the English version of the Quran. Now, obviously, it won't have the same eloquence and effect as the Arabic, but that still helps. And I personally recommend, if you're starting off with reading the Quran, read the Study Quran by the author Sayyid Hussein Nasr and co. This is a great introduction to the Quran. It also has some exegesis, some tafsir of the Quran, so that if you don't understand the verses that you're reading, they explain some of the verses. One thing you should try to do to increase your sabr, your patience, is I want everyone today to make a vow, dear brothers and sisters. Today make a vow that the next time somebody annoys you, somebody bothers you, whether it's your spouse, whether it's your parents, whether it's your kids, whether it's a friend, inshallah not me. The next time somebody bothers you, try to be patient with them. Is that too difficult? Is that asking for too much? Just one time. The next time Somebody bothers you, be patient with them, be forbearing. And then after that, try to make it a habit to be patient with people. For patience is one of the most beloved and desired traits of Allah. Imam Ali, peace be upon him, is narrated to have said, I have so much patience that even patience is wary of my patience. Allahu Akbar. This is our Imam. This is our leader. Now, of course, we cannot reach Imam Ali. We can't reach the level that he obtained. However, we can aspire to be like him, even if that's a fraction of what he is. So the next time someone bothers you, whether it's here on your way home tomorrow, just make an effort to be patient with them. To be patient with that individual. The third is, like we discussed yesterday, try to engage in as many acts of charity that you are able to. Especially if you have a long-term vision for charity. Some people, from the day that they're young, they decide, when I grow older, I want to build an orphanage. I want to build a hospital. I want to do this. I want to build a Husayniyah. I'd like to develop or help build a masjid. Yes, overnight, it's difficult to accomplish much. However, if you plan long-term, you'd be surprised. You would be bewildered at what the human being is capable of. And I'll give two examples. One is in Spain, a man by the name of Justo Gallego. This man is a Catholic. He's a man from a very poor rural village. He's not educated. He was a laborer his entire life. However, the last 40 years of his life, the last 40 years of his life, he by himself wanted to dedicate something to God. And so he started the construction of a cathedral. If you go Google his name, there's various videos about him. It's an amazing cathedral that he by himself constructed. He learned how to do plumbing. He learned how to do electric. He learned how to do all this stuff to develop a building in the name of God. And it's a truly magnificent, you can Google it. Justo Gallego in Spain. It took him 40 years, but yet this is his legacy, and he asked his family members to bury him inside this cathedral. Another example is if you ever visit Turkey, Istanbul, you can go visit a masjid. The masjid is called, the Arabic translation, Masjid Ka'anni Akalt. That translates to masjid. The masjid is called masjid as if I ate. Now, what does that mean? This man, he was a very, average person with an average job 300 years ago. He decided one day, when I die, I want to leave something for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? He came one day with a bag of fruits, some pomegranates. He set them on the table. He had a quick work, something, very quick he had to do. So he told his family, engage in eating these fruits, have some fun, but leave one for me. When I come back, I'll eat it. When he came back, he saw that, the pomegranates, I guess, were so good. His family had eaten all the pomegranates. They hadn't even left him one. So he said, if my family, during my life, they don't leave me anything, what about the afterlife? When I die, what's going to be left for me? So he said, I want to dedicate something for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So every time he would go to the store, whenever he wanted to purchase something, whether it's a banana, a piece of fruit, some sweets, that very delicious Turkish delight, whenever he wanted to purchase something, he would take the money out of his pocket. Let's say it costs $2. He would say, Ka'anni akalt. It's as if I ate this. And then he would take the money, put it in the other pocket, and then put it in a safe place. Right? Because whatever you ate yesterday doesn't matter today. What happened yesterday is yesterday. So he gathered the funds throughout his life. By the end of his life, it's not even much. He didn't do any fundraisers. He didn't go begging people. Just the money of whatever he wanted to eat, the additional things. He set it aside for a masjid, and he built this masjid 300 years ago. And it still stands today, and everyone who goes and prays, part of the ajr and hasanat and rewards goes back to this man. SubhanAllah. Look at what a legacy. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. ثانية بأعلى أصواتكم. Lastly, my dear brothers and sisters, we need to invest much of our time in our family relations. In fact, if there's anything we are to invest our time in, wouldn't it be our own family members, especially our children? They're our own flesh and blood. Dear brothers and sisters, you'd be surprised how many families, especially fathers, unfortunately, they barely spend 20 minutes of quality time with their kids. Now, why is that? The hadith from Prophet Jesus, peace be upon him, states, what have you gained if you have the entire world, but you lost your kids? You may gain all the riches and all the worldly gains of this world, but if you lose your kids, you don't have a proper, good relationship with your children, what's the point? Is there any point to life? In fact, studies have shown that the biggest correlative with happiness is how good your social relations are, especially your familial ties, and especially with your kids, right? Who is closer to you than your children? Unfortunately, many parents, they live in one universe, and their kids live in another universe. Especially with this online social media age, it's very difficult to raise your children. You have to put additional effort. Whatever back home percentage of effort you put in, you have to double that here. Many kids go through all kinds of struggles, whether that's mental health struggles, struggles with school, struggles with peer pressure, bullying, and many parents are just completely oblivious. So make it a habit. Force yourself if you have to. Spend at least an hour of quality time. Now, quality time means your phone, you put it away, you turn off the TV, you look eye to eye with your children, and you give them that quality time that they need. Many children are starved of affection and attention. So give them that attention that they crave. Even if it's just an hour. Think of it like this. As we mentioned earlier, if kids are exposed to 6 hours of TikTok a day, try to at least match that. If you can't offer 6, try to at least match that with 1 hour of quality time with your children. And mothers especially, right? The honorable role of a mother is to make sure that your kids are raised properly. If you look at any individual person and you see them to be very polite, very faithful, a strong believer of the Ahlul Bayt, know that definitely their mother raised them well. And tonight, my dear brothers and sisters, we remember a mother of 4. A mother who gave everything she had for the sake of Allah and towards the mission of Imam al-Hussein. And that's Our Lady, al-Baneen, peace be upon her. al-Baneen gave everything she had. Imam Ali, Amir al-Mu'mineen, peace be upon her, after the martyrdom of his wife, Sayyidah Fatima, he married al-Baneen. He went to his brother Aqil, who was a genealogist, right? He knew everybody in the city. He knew all the ansab, the ancestries of everybody. What did he ask Aqil, his brother? He says, اخطب لامرأة ولدتها الفحولة من العرب. I want you to marry me, find me someone, a lady who is a lioness. Now Aqil asks, well, why? Imam Ali says, so that he may help my children on the day of Shiddah. What was Imam Ali referring to? So that she may bring children who help his son Aba Abdullah on the day of Ashura. Now this lady, al-Baneen, she had 4 children, 4 beloved children, and the moon of her eyes was Abul Fadl al-Abbas. Can you imagine having such incredible, awe-inspiring children and having to sacrifice them for the way of Allah? After Ashura, Imam Zain al-Abidin told one of his companions by the name of Bashir, he told him, go back to Medina and inform the inhabitants of Medina of what had happened during Karbala. So he runs to Medina. He stands on the outskirts of the city. He starts crying, Ya Ahla Yathrib! Ya Ahla Yathrib! And then the people, they start coming. They ask, Bashir, what's going on? Mal khabar? He says, Al khabar inda qabri Rasulillah. I will give you the news by the grave of Rasulullah. So Bashir heads, he stands by the grave of Rasulullah. The people, the inhabitants of Medina, they start to gather. They start asking him, Mal khabar? Why have you gathered? Why have you called everyone? Bashir, with tears coming down his cheeks. He looks at the inhabitants of Medina and he says, يا أهل يثرب لا مقام لكم بها. O people of Medina, your joy, your security will be taken away after today. The people started asking why? What happened? يا أهل يثرب لا مقام لكم بها قتل الحسين فأدمعي مدرار. He says, Hussein, the grandson, the kabid of Rasulullah has been killed, and therefore I cry. And all of a sudden, from the Masjid al-Nabawi, by the grave of Rasulullah, you hear the cries of the inhabitants of Medina, that their beloved Imam Aba Abdullah al-Hussein has passed away, has been martyred. As they are crying, Bashir notices a lady, a respectable lady, begins to approach him. He asks people, who is this lady? They tell him, this is the wife of Amir al-Mu'mineen. This is al-Baneen. Now al-Baneen, she comes, what does she ask Bashir? Look at the belief, look at the iman, the strength this lady has, and that we ought to emulate. She comes and tells Bashir, Bashirni an waladi al-Husayn. Tell me about my son Hussein. It's as if she was in shock. She couldn't fully understand what she had just said. And this is despite her having 4 children. And yet her attention, her thoughts are with Hussein. She calls him my son Hussein. Now he didn't want to break the news again to her. It was too difficult. So what does he tell her? عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك جعفر. My condolences to you on the passing of your son Ja'far. She says, Bashir, I didn't ask you about Ja'far. I asked you about my son Hussein. He doesn't want to break the news to her. He tells her, Ya al-Banin, عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك عون. Oh al-Banin, my condolences to you on the passing of your son Aun. She tells him, Bashir, that's not what I asked for. Tell me about my son Hussein. He looks at her and he tells her, عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك أبا الفضل العباس. She begins to cry. She says, Bashir, you've ripped my heart into pieces. Don't tell me about my sons, tell me about my son Hussein. He tells her, al-Banin, عظم الله لك الأجر بولدك الحسين. My condolences on your son Hussein. She begins to cry and she cries out, Wa Husayna, Wa walada. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. فسيعلم الذين ظلموا آل محمد أي منقلب ينقلبون والعاقبة للمتقين. حبيبي